Hi, everyone. It has been a very tumultuous few days in Los Angeles as ICE raids have swept through neighborhoods and protests continue. 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines have been deployed by the Trump administration against the wishes of state and city officials. Karen Bass is at the center of the storm. She's the mayor of Los Angeles. Karen Bass, thank you for talking with us. First off, can you tell us what the situation is right now? We're speaking at 6:40 Eastern time, 3:40 on the West Coast.
Sure. Well, right now there are protests that are taking place that are relatively peaceful. I think there have been a couple of instances of something thrown at the police, but for the most part, it has not broken out into the violence that you saw the last couple of nights. And that has been absolutely horrible. And I really question as to who the people are that are doing that, because we have a long, long history here of having very strong immigrant rights institutions, well respected, well established. They commonly do protests, they never devolve into violence. So right now, things are peaceful. We are happy to know that the local police departments will provide mutual aid to Los Angeles in addition to our sheriff's department. The National Guard is here. They are guarding the federal building. That is all they are doing. They're not involved in control of the protesters or anything like that. And it just makes me wonder, what on earth are 1,000 more National Guard soldiers going to do? And for goodness sake, what are 700 Marines going to do?
Well, that's the question I wanted to ask you. What is your understanding in terms of their orders? As you said, the National Guard units who are currently there are basically protecting the federal building. What is your understanding of what they'll continue to do? Just that?
Well, you know that is our big dilemma. That's the dilemma in the country, is that we never know what is going to come out of the administration. We're only hearing things verbally that I have to qualify as rumors, because unless you show me in writing, I do not know. We were told that a rumor, again, is that the raids would go on for 30 days. We never know when they're going to happen, where or why, and we're not notified. So it's basically word of mouth. It's the rapid response network that the immigrant rights community has developed, so that, Angelinos, if they see ICE, they call in that information, and that's where we find out about raids taking place.
When
I
is the
think the
last
other thing
time?
that
Oh, go ahead.
I think one thing that is very, very important to note is that if you look at the imagery on TV, you would think that there is mass civil unrest all over the city. These are isolated streets within downtown LA. This is not even the entire downtown LA, but the imagery looks as though there is pandemonium here. What has happened is that when the night comes, that's when people come out, because they're stragglers from a protest that happened many, many hours before.
I understand that you all are implementing a curfew now.
Mhm.
Tell
Yes,
us
we
about
are
that.
looking, sure. We are fine tuning that right now. We're not prepared to announce it, but we are working toward that. And it would be a curfew around those few blocks that I described, because that is where the vandalism has taken place. And I don't want to sugarcoat the vandalism. It has been terrible. Its major form is graffiti, and the graffiti in a way that I just have never seen before. There were some stores that were broken into and looted last night. That was really kind of the first time. It was 23 stores. The night before, it was 3 stores. So the question is this an escalation or was it an opportunity? But I actually think that the crowds that are doing this are driven by social media. They're not involved in immigrants' rights, because frankly, I don't believe anybody that is concerned about immigrants would participate in this kind of behavior. But just like they organize for street racing, or organize for illegal parties, or organize for smash and grab robberies, I think that is what we're looking at. That is what concerns the city, and we will be able to get a handle on that, as we have so many other times.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. That's a good segue to my next question. Is the LAPD able to handle these isolated incidents of violence that seem to be, as you mentioned, escalating in recent days?
Well, let me just tell you what is not needed. our soldiers from the National Guard and from the Marines. The LAPD can handle it, but the LAPD is not alone. Los Angeles County has 88 cities in it. When a department is in need of additional support, they do mutual aid. And so he is able to call on the sheriff's department, which is the largest police agency in the area. He's also able to call on mutual aid from the surrounding cities and frankly, the surrounding counties, which is why we were and are completely able to handle this situation ourselves. And it is very chilling to know that the president essentially usurped power away from the governor by federalizing the National Guard. If he had not done that, if the National Guard was still under the direction of our governor and we needed them, we would have no problem having them and having them here. And so that's why this was unnecessary, why it makes me feel like we're participating involuntarily in a stunt or an experiment to see what happens when the federal government steps in. How far can they go, usurping state power or local power? And as a warning to other cities around the country, if this can happen to the nation's second largest city, look out.
When was the last time you spoke to President Trump?
Oh, I have not spoken to him. The last time I spoke to him was in January when he was here right after the fires. I do speak to people in his administration, and I am placing a call to speak with him directly now.
What has your working relationship in the middle of this crisis been like with Gavin Newsom?
Oh, great. I mean, the governor and I have worked together for many years, actually, even before I was mayor. But we work well together. We worked well together on the wildfires, and we definitely are working well together in this because we both feel under attack by the White House.
Do you believe that the presence of the National Guard and now the Marines has somehow escalated the situation and even invited some of the bad actors who are showing up, creating a violent situation? In other words, did it make matters worse in your view?
There is no doubt that it did, but we do have to acknowledge that the primary reason why people are outraged is because of the raids. That is what the problem is, not knowing when and where and how or why raids are going to take place around the city. You know, parents not knowing if they should send their kids to school, not knowing if they should go to work, you know, and you even have a situation here where legal residents have to report into immigration once a year. That is normal. That is always the way it's been. But now they are reporting with their papers just to check in, and they're being detained. So that creates a sense of fear and instability and uncertainty. But we know that that's one of the themes of this administration is uncertainty, whether we are talking about tariffs, whether we are talking about relations with other countries, and in this instance, whether or not the administration will allow a sovereign state to govern its cities.
I know that Los Angeles filed a suit against the administration or challenging the federal takeover of the National Guard. Can you tell us the latest on that lawsuit? Because I understand a federal judge declined California's emergency request to immediately block the deployment of the Marines and the National Guard.
I think those lawsuits came out of the governor's office. The city attorney is working on a lawsuit on behalf of the city, but I do not believe that's been filed yet. The city attorney in Los Angeles is an independently elected official, which is unlike, I mean, what is common is individual cities don't have their own city attorney office. We have a city attorney office who is elected with about 1,000 lawyers that work for the city.
But you two are planning, or the city is planning to file a lawsuit against the federal government as well?
Yes, the city attorney is absolutely looking at that. I've not been briefed on where she is. I will be, but I'm sure if the recommendation is that we should move forward, that I would not have a problem with that. But I will have an opportunity to decide that one way or another.
Are you concerned, Mayor Bass, about the images that are being projected on social media? As you said, there has been some violence, but they are misleading to say the least, and I think are exaggerating the level of violence. But are you fearful that this will play into the administration's hands and somehow help them justify the deployment of these military personnel?
100% I'm concerned about that. If you were in Los Angeles today and you were in the downtown area and you drove 3 miles east or west, you would never know anything was happening at all. And so that's why I'm trying to talk to the media as much as possible to clarify the imagery that people are seeing. It was the same thing, by the way, with the wildfires, that people were under the impression that the entire city was burning. And the only area I govern is the Palisades. And I would bet you that 90% of Angelenos do not actually know where the Palisades is. You know Los Angeles is a sprawling city spread out over many, many, many miles. And it is not uncommon for people not to know which neighborhoods are actually in the city of Los Angeles or the county of Los Angeles.
Can you tell us the status of the individuals who have been apprehended by ICE agents? How many have been, and what has happened to those individuals? And are they receiving representation?
Well, let me say, no, they are not receiving representation. And two, I can't give you the numbers because we don't know. We don't know where they are. We know who they are for the most part because the families that have come forward to say, this is my relative, this is my relative. But if you didn't come forward, we would not know. And that's part of the things that the immigrant rights organizations will tell you is a marked departure from the past. People were not in the past denied legal representation. People were not denied the ability to call their families and tell them where they are. And you know, the aggressiveness and extreme nature of this administration is, you know, they have to be worried as to whether their relatives are even still in the United States. Have they been sent to CCOT prison in El Salvador, regardless of where they come from? You can only imagine the fear and the terror that people feel. And just think about it, you know, in our city, we have areas of our economy that could not function without immigrant labor. You
I was
might
going to
have
ask you about that, Mayor Bass, because I think people outside of Los Angeles don't fully understand the role immigrants play in your city and what they do for the economy and really for the culture of Los Angeles. Can you address that?
I absolutely can address that. You know, you take the construction industry, for example. People say that 40% of the construction industry is Latino. I think it's way higher than that. If you look at who is rebuilding the Palisades, it looks like it's 90%. You know, you could look at people who do landscaping, gardeners, a lot of small business owners too, tons of restaurants, tons of other type of businesses that address the
Farm
needs of
workers,
farm workers, although not in the city of Los
right?
Angeles, but yes, absolutely. Agricultural workers for sure. And so again, whole industries are impacted. And the idea that the federal government would do this now, we are a year away from the World Cup. They are going to spend $130 million if they really bring in all these troops that are not needed at all. The administration should give us the 130 million so we can prepare the city for the World Cup. I know he's excited about the World Cup. You know, he wants to play a prominent role in the World Cup. So why would you tear apart the city where the World Cup is going to be in? It's a mystery to all of us what they're doing right now. But I do feel like it's an experiment. How far can we go? What is really happening here in a city that they knew would have a good chance of exploding if there were raids because of the level of organization of the immigrant community in Los Angeles.
In fact, you have called the administration's response a solution in search of a problem. What do you think
Right,
their
exactly.
motives are?
You know, the only motive that I could think of is experimenting with what would happen if they, you know, really seized control. They know what's true. They know that this city was not out of control. They know this. The night, by the way, that the president tweeted a congratulations to the National Guard and said that they were able to, he at his leadership was able to bring about peace because everything was in chaos, and he applauded the National Guard. We had 120 demonstrators out that night. They were involved in vandalism, and about 20 of them was arrested. Now, you don't think that Los Angeles Police Department can't handle 120 people? But Katie, the National Guard hadn't even been deployed here. So, you have to wonder, I mean, how could you consider that serious when he applauds the National Guard and they're not even here? And every day he's talking about what wonderful work the National Guard is doing, and they are literally protecting a building. They are not in crowd control. They don't leave their posts. And so I don't know what impact he thinks they could be having.
And in fact, they haven't even been trained in crowd control.
No. No, they haven't. And so people are asking me, well, what will happen when the Marines come? What is going to be their mission? I have no idea. I mean, we could talk rumors I've heard, but to me, dealing in a professional manner with such a serious issue, you would think that there would be formal documents that would come and tell us what was going to happen. None such
In fact,
exists.
the chief of police was complaining there was no coordination between
Right.
these military officers, military entities, if you will, and the police department. Has that improved at all? Have they been speaking to each other?
Not, I mean, I spoke to the chief 20 minutes ago. No, there has been no communication, none.
That seems so crazy to me.
Which is why, I come to the conclusions that I do. If this was sincere, they would ask us, what do you need? What do you need? That's not what they're doing. They're telling us this is what we're going to do. And they're also telling us what the situation on the ground is. And they're not even here in Los Angeles. So it's tough for me to hear that all of these things, for example, the criticism was the LA Police Department is MIA. They're not making arrests because you won't let them make an arrest. It's like, I'm not the chief of police. I don't tell the chief does not have to ask me for permission for when he makes arrests. So when all of those things happen like that, you can't go any place else other than to know that it is not sincere.
So, how many arrests have been made, Mayor Bass, of people who have been, behaving in a criminal way in the midst of these largely peaceful protests?
Right now, it's about up to 183, but those are arrests that are made on the spot. What I think a lot of people that are committing crimes don't realize, they might think that they're getting off free because they're not arrested that night. But our city, like most cities, are filled with cameras. You can see footage of people, and an investigation happens, and more people will be arrested. That's for sure. So just because you graffitied up a building and got away tonight does not mean that we won't come for you tomorrow.
These ICE raids will continue. I guess it's your understanding and taking it from you for another, I guess, 30 days.
That's the rumor.
That's the rumor, but
Call it a rumor.
and so there's no communication at all with you all.
No.
So let's say they do continue for 30 more days. What is your biggest concern as you face the weeks to come?
I was talking to someone who was telling me that they went to their local grocery store and the shelves were empty because there was nobody to stock the shelves. So my biggest fear is the impact that all Angelenos will begin to feel when the labor of immigrants is absent. We'll feel it in the construction industry. We'll feel it in hospitality. We'll feel it at grocery stores. People will begin to notice. You think about the mothers who have nannies and housekeepers. They will feel it when there's nobody to do childcare and there's nobody to take their kids to school. You will feel it when your gardener goes away and you don't know where he or she is. So Angelenos will feel the absence of immigrant labor.
So you obviously are talking about the practical and economic impact, but can you describe sort of the human impact of what is happening to many of these families in your city?
Yes, and I just, it's so important, and I appreciate you saying that because to have parents who are not sure they could go to work or to be fearful of letting their kids go to school, it disrupts families. It creates unbelievable pressure and tension. You can imagine the mental health impacts on the children, especially the children that are old enough to remember the last Trump administration, or were old enough to remember COVID. I mean, those were traumatic events, or were impacted by the wildfires. Well, here's another level of trauma that was completely unnecessary, that was inflicted upon you
Ambassador,
by,
what? Go ahead.
I was just saying, by your federal government.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about a video that a friend sent me today, and then I'm not going to take any more of your time. I just have two more questions. Someone I know sent me a video of a man with a backpack kind of being trampled by LAPD officers on horseback. And
Oh,
yes, and I can send it to your team,
would
but
you?
yes, I will. But I'm wondering if the relationship between the police, not just in Los Angeles, and citizens can become very tense, as you well know. And I'm
Yes.
curious if you're concerned about this exacerbating the already pre-existing tension between law enforcement and some of the citizens of your city.
Absolutely. I'm always concerned about that. Anytime there is a negative interaction with law enforcement. But in this situation where you're talking about masses of people witnessing things, yes, it is absolutely critically important that that not take a foothold, meaning that there was an incident that you described. There were a couple of other incidents that you described. But remember, this is really relegated to a few streets in downtown Los Angeles. So where I would be far more worried is if we were experiencing mass protests and mass civil unrest, and there was mass anger at the Los Angeles Police Department. So far, that has not really happened. There is anger, in terms of at the end of these protests when people are forced to abide by the law or get arrested. But just in general, I think that has not been the case, and we always want to strive for better police community relations.
And finally, I mean, Los Angeles has been through a very tough year. Just 6 months ago, obviously, you had those wildfires that devastated many communities. And now you have these ICE raids, military deployments, and you are in a very public facing job, obviously, and have been a visible and vocal defender of Los Angeles. I'm curious if you feel like this moment is providing you with a second chance to demonstrate the kind of leadership your city needs, because I know you did face some serious criticism in the wake of those wildfires.
Honestly, I haven't, I've been so immersed in this since Friday morning. I really haven't thought of it that way at all. I think that what is so different about this, again, that this is something that is imposed upon us. And how ironic is it? Because just last week, if you had asked me about my relation with the administration and how they were serving or not Los Angeles, I would have been singing praises, because one of the reasons why we're so far ahead of any other city that has experienced wildfires is because of the support we did get from the administration. And we were working very well and communicating regularly. And now the pendulum has swung all the way on the other side.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, again, thank you so much for your time and for taking time out of your very busy day to speak with me. I'm grateful.